Paul joins us right now. Of course, he's with WFAN, covers the New York Giants. And, man, Daniel Jones has taken a lot of shrapnel this week, Paul.
How about atomic bombs?
Yeah.
It's coming from all over, and not just the New York metropolitan area. It seems as though the entire country is piling on this kid. The shame of it is for him, and we all know that the quarterback is always going to be the magnet for the good and for the bad every week. He played very, very poorly, but so the rest of the team. I was telling people right after the game, I said, look, if you ever wanted to know the definition of a skunk game, this was it for the Giants. They were just awful all around.
Paul, I felt the worst for him when I saw the video of him walking out to his vehicle outside of MetLife after the game, and the fans are just booing him and just killing him on the way to his car. It's like, if you want to boo him in the stadium while he's on the field, whatever. But like, I just felt like that was crossing the line, I thought, by the Giants fans to basically attack him in the player parking lot.
Yeah, to his credit, he is one of those guys who takes his lead from Eli Manning.
Right.
He learned under Eli. He's always had the same demeanor as Eli, and he says he shuts out all the outside noise. I'd have to say the instance that you're talking about, it's pretty hard to shut that out. He says that he has. I have no reason not to believe him, but you have to also think that deep down inside, he'd love nothing more than to have a get-well game against a Washington team that he has done extremely well against during the course of his career, which could at least throw some ice buckets on the fire.
Well, was it especially tough for Giants fans to see Daniel Jones outplayed by Sam Darnold, who had, some well-documented struggles with the Jets being such a high pick there? But if it was any other quarterback other than Sam Darnold, I don't think it would have been as bad. But for Darnold to lead the Vikings to such a convincing win over the Giants in MetLife, I think that added an extra subplot to the loss.
It may have, but to be frank with you, I'm not so sure that it made a whole lot of difference. There is a segment of the Giants fandom out there that is absolutely 1,000% blinders on, dead set against Daniel Jones, and won't be happy until he's out of the lineup. And that's just the way it is. He could throw for 5 touchdown passes on Sunday, and they'll still find something wrong with him. That's just how badly some of the worms have turned in this situation. And look, I'm sure you guys have seen it before, too. You've had a franchise down there in D.C. that's had a lot of trouble in recent years. And there's a player that folks just get all their britches up in a bunch about, and they're not going to let go. If he's 29 for 30, they're going to complain about the one incompletion.
Well, Paul, if there was a team that Daniel Jones could potentially throw 5 touchdowns against, it would be the Commanders, because last week in Tampa, they allowed 15 catches to the wide receivers for almost 200 yards and 4 touchdowns. Now, my question on top of that is, what's the status of Malik Neighbors? We saw him pop up on the injury report for a knee issue. I saw some reports said it wasn't anything major. It was kind of a maintenance day. Can you give us the latest on Malik Neighbors and what his status is for the game?
Yeah, as far as I can tell, it was more of a maintenance day, just a bit of soreness after the opening day game. And remember now, you guys have real grass down there in Washington. Giants played on turf this past week. Not that was necessarily anything to do with it, because, over the years, the MetLife Stadium turf has gotten a lot of negative pub. I don't necessarily know that that's what caused his knee to get a bit sore, but I think it was just precautionary. They understand that he is their most dangerous, most potent offensive weapon, and they're going to treat him with kid gloves because, long-term over the course of the season, they know they need him to be big. And, if it means he's got to take a practice or two off every once in a while because he's a little sore, I think the Giants are going to be okay with that.
Paul, how did you and the rest of the media feel about the decision to let Saquon go, especially to a division rival? And he obviously has a bomb first game with 3 touchdowns. Devin Singletary comes in. His third team now. He was with Houston last year for 1 year. He had 37 yards last week, so the Vikings obviously did a very good job against the run because Daniel Jones just wasn't a threat passing the ball. But how did you feel about letting Saquon go?
Well, I think the best way I can answer that is from the general New York perspective. I told people, I said, listen, as a fan, you have to hate it, right? I mean, he was the face of the franchise. He was one of the few bright spots on offense over the last several years. And he goes to an arch rival that, let's not kid ourselves, no matter how much Dallas and Washington are in the division and there's a lot of heat there, there is no more heat than between the Giants and Philadelphia. The Turnpike tussle, the rivalry right down to the end of the state, there is tremendous bad blood amongst the fan bases between these two teams. So as a Giants fan per se, I could understand why they were so disgusted and so upset with the situation. As someone who understands football and the business aspect of the game, the Giants absolutely did what they had to do. Saquon Barkley sold out the Giants. He went to the team that was offering him the most money, did not have any remorse or regrets about it, after pledging for well over a year that he wanted to be a Giant for life and wanted to get his number retired here and wanted to be one of the old-time greats and help this franchise win. Well, talk is cheap when somebody starts throwing around the keys to Fort Knox. And so that's what happened. He got the richest deal he could get his hands on, jumped at it, and that was a business decision. And so I think if you're the Giants, you could not chase him up the economic ladder to pay an outrageous number of dollars that the Eagles paid. Remember, we're talking about a guy who has not exactly been the most durable back in the league. And I think he, without question, he's one of the top 5 most talented all-around running backs in the NFL.
Yep.
There's no doubt in my mind about that. Okay? And it wasn't like the Giants were going to pay him like the 15th back. No, as I understood it, their offer was going to put him right up there at the borderline of the top 5 backs. But he wanted, to be like the second highest paid back. Well, the Giants could not do that, especially with an offensive line that needed to gain some financial resources to improve. And so they did what they had to do. Business-wise, I thought the Giants were right, and Barkley certainly did what was right for his bank account.
Talking to Paul Dottino, covers the Giants for WFAN in New York. So one of the strengths of the Giants should be their pass rush. They couldn't generate anything last week against the Vikings, taking on a Commanders offensive line that we had a lot of questions about. What do you expect from Burns and Thibodeau and the Giants pass rush this week?
You may laugh, fellas, but that to me, as I looked at this Giants team last week, was the most disappointing factor of the entire day. Yeah, I know the offense was terrible, and you could say, well, why in the world wouldn't you say that? I'll say because there is so much talent on the Giants' front 7 between Thibodeau and Burns and Dexter Lawrence, and Nacho's not a bad 3 technique. Linebackers, holy smokes. Bobby Okereke should have gone to the Pro Bowl last year. They decided not to play Isaiah Simmons. They played Dane Belton instead as the money backer, which I'm not exactly sure why they did that, but that's what they did. They said it was a matchup issue. That didn't work out so well. But I am so impressed with the Giants' talent on front 7, and they were invisible last week. They did some decent things against the run. It wasn't so bad there. But the pass rush, which, Shane Bowman, the new defensive coordinator who came over from Tennessee, relies on the front 4. He doesn't want to blitz very much. He basically wants to say to those 4 studs up front, hey, guys, you get it done. And they were just invisible. And they blamed part of it on the scheme. The Vikings, and every single pass play, they either added an extra blocker or had a chip on every single pass play on the edges. So they clearly were willing to give up something. Well, how much did they give up? They wound up scoring 28 points, including a pick 6, of course. But the Giants did not fight through their one-on-one battles nearly enough. And to me, that was the biggest shock in the game, that the Giants did not get the pass rush on Darnold because, as you say, he sees ghosts. And they basically did nothing to cause him any consternation. And that was ridiculous. I never would have predicted that going into the game. So we'll see. We will see. Jaden Daniels, I know he's going to want to run. This guy wants to have a track meet every week. I don't know if he's going to have to run if the Giants can't get home.
Yeah, Paul, one of the guys at the bottom of that box score was Kayvon Thibodeau. He was basically invisible. He did have one quarterback hit, didn't have any tackles, didn't have any sacks. And then I saw the clip of him in the locker room post-game. He didn't want to talk about the defensive struggles. Like, he was like, no comment, next question. He was very dismissive of one of the reporters. I just thought that was a bad look for him coming off a poor performance like you touched on.
Well, actually, I looked at that in two ways. The reporter was baiting him. It was the third question in a row as the guy went after him pretty hard, where Thibodeau finally said, okay, next question. And you guys know, there are some guys who will ask a question in a professional manner, and then there was other guys who clearly are trying to dangle some bait and trying to get a reaction. This reporter tried to get a reaction, and he got one. To Thibodeau's on his side of the ledger, he's got to do a better job. He's got to know that there's bait being thrown in the water, and he's got to do a better job of not falling into it. So I kind of think that was a bad look for both parties, if you really want me to be honest with you. As far as Thibodeau is concerned, though, this is a guy who has had tremendous success against the Washington franchise. You mentioned Daniel Jones earlier. Usually throws the ball well against them. Thibodeau's done the same thing. I mean, in 2 years against Washington, I got him for 5.5 sacks of his 15.5 in his career thus far. And we know about the big play he made on the strip sack back down there in Landover on the touchdown. So, you know, if you want to pick a game for him to get well, this would be the one, right?
You would think.
Oh,
Yeah,
how you? So
history
how you?
says so.
So how are you feeling about the game? How are you feeling about the matchup?
Well, I mean, it's a show-me game for both teams, right?
Yes.
I'm sure Washington is incredibly disappointed with the way they performed. I do believe the Giants have more talent on their 53 than Washington, and you know, but what does that mean? I mean, both teams played horrible last week, and they're both in show-me mode. They need to show that they can play as good as the back of their football card. And I still believe that the biggest part of that, and you guys will have to tell me, and I'm going to ask you a question.
Yeah.
I still think that this September preseason football is horrific. Okay?
Yeah.
I don't think starters play enough in August, and I think this is part of the reason why we see such poor, subpar, quite frankly, preseason quality football.
Yeah.
And when you're a middleweight team like the Giants are, you're not a heavyweight team, you're a middleweight team. You can't play, you know, preseason football in the regular season. You will lose. You could lose to a high school team when you play that badly. And I'm sure the Washington Commanders probably feel the same way.
Hey,
I mean, tell me, how many of the starters played a whole lot of snaps in the preseason?
Not many.
Yeah, very few.
Not many. All right, Paul.
Well, guys, and you rebuilt your line, right? You rebuilt your defense and you rebuilt your line. So why would you not play these guys more snaps? Makes no sense to me.
Yeah,
Coaches are scared of injury.
They are. They're terrified of it. But
yeah, well, you know what? When you're scared and you don't go for it, you usually get buried.
yeah, it's a big one because you know both cities think this is a must-win. Certainly, we do down here. So, hey, Paul, thanks for the time, and we'll talk to you again soon, buddy. Appreciate it.
All right, guys. Always good to be with you.
Yep.
All right.
Good to have you, man.